Hey guys, this is Chef Farouj, founder of realfoodismedicine.com and Indulge Right Foods. In this video, I want to address the misleading and somewhat dangerous information that's been floating around the net about the safety of consuming sourdough bread for those with celiac disease or even for those with non-celiac gluten sensitivities or allergies. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a chef by background. I've been in the food industry for 27 years, and I've always had a fascination about sourdough bread. In fact, I've been involved in it or played with it since I was 20, so it's been about 22 years now. And I still maintain a sourdough mother. There's this something amazing about taking some flour and water and turning it into this beautiful loaf. My fascination with it is so much that you would have found me standing in front of the oven in that little crack window that they have and looking at the loaves taking transformation, changing shape, the crack, examining every little move or the lack of it to really understand it better and learn as much possible about it. And that was my life pretty much. I lived on it. Made a living with it until I was diagnosed with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. I didn't buy the whole thing initially until I finally tried it, went gluten-free, and my symptoms reversed. That's when I became a little more aware of the fact that food could be more medicinal and goes beyond just fulfilling, right, the need to eat something. And of course, I got more involved into it. I learned as much as I could about it and turned it into business. And that's where Indulge Right Foods was born, realfoodismedicine.com was born, helping other people live a healthy lifestyle, create a lifestyle. Is gluten-free? Do I believe that gluten-free is 100% foolproof or it's the magic formula? Absolutely not. The lifestyle that you can create, going gluten-free perhaps is part of it. That will change your life completely. There's science backing that 100%. Coming back to why I don't believe that all these articles that's been going around, whether it's on, most recent was on Huffington Post a couple of weeks ago, on Dr. Mercola's, on Living Strong, Bon Appetit, and a bunch of other blog posts about the safety of eating gluten or fermented hydrolyzed, as it's called in the experiments, of flour, so sourdough bread, basically. So another thing you need to know about me is before I open up my mouth, I want to research as much as I can about it and find as much information about something. And I did that with this particular subject. So most of the studies are really citing about a couple, or about 5 studies published from 2010, 2011 until 2017 being the latest. Here's the problem. First of all, let me go back into the production very quickly as far as the sourdough bread process of baking and from A to Z, so that when we get back to the experiment, to the studies and the science of it, and the publications that have been cited in here, it starts to make sense. So in a nutshell, you have the mother or sourdough starter. To that, you add other ingredients: water, flour, salt, sometimes seeds, nuts, whatever. Generally speaking, you take the sourdough, you add the ingredients, you shape it, you mix it, you shape it, you form it into the loaf, desired shape. You let it ferment. It could run anywhere for up to 24 hours. It could be a couple hours. Then you start to bake it. Throughout this whole process, here's the key. Throughout the whole process, you're adding regular flour, whether it's whole wheat, white, blanched, unblanched, rye, barley, doesn't matter. You're adding more unfermented flour. So it's not hydrolyzed yet. And then you're baking it. You're baking it also in an environment that's full of flour, unfermented flour. Let's keep in mind, these articles are addressing sourdough bread, or soured or hydrolyzed, as it's referred to, flour. Okay? All of this process is happening in an environment that's full of flour that's not fermented. We're good so far. Let's go back to the science, or all the articles that's being published about this, the subject saying that it's safe for everybody to eat sourdough, or those with celiac disease to eat it, because of the fermentation process that breaks down the protein composition of the wheat, or the gluten protein composition. The problem is that most of these studies were done in a petri dish style experiments. In other words, none of them took it to the bakery, where you have all the other flours floating around, and at the end of the day, after production of that loaf, took it to testing and said, okay, well, we have X amount of parts per million in gluten in it still, or we don't have any. One specific study that's been, or the only study that has been conducted on actual human beings with celiac disease, which used a very small pool of people. It must have been under 20, because it's not very specific, but 6 of those basically never continued because they had symptoms, so they dropped out. A couple of them had some minor side effects. The other 5 that continued throughout the process, they end up consuming products that are under 8 parts per million. So in other words, you could consider it gluten-free. Here's the thing. There's no indication as to how long that fermentation process was. There's no indication whether or not they've used 100% hydrolyzed flour or sourdough, and in what process. There was no indication as to the timing and what else has been done. So that's kind of almost inconclusive, or really not solid study. The only reference that I found in one of the studies, I think that was published in 2017, that had some sort of a time frame, where they basically fermented the flour for about 360 minutes, so about 6 hours. And they measured the gluten content, and that was about 10 parts per million, which here in the United States is considered gluten-free. But again, that was not taken to another step outside the petri dish, right? So we don't exactly know how far they went with it. Once again, it doesn't tell me that it is safe or has been conducted in other experiments, right? All the other experiments that I found that were published in reputable sources, pretty much they all had this petri dish experiment with the assumption that fermentation, hydrolysis, really breaks down the protein peptides of the gluten. So that's where the problem is. There's absolutely no reference to whether or not that the final saying is actually accurate or not. So that's where I'm going to caution you of eating or jumping into this whole belief that eating sourdough is safe for you. Now, I'm all open about learning more about it. So if you are someone who was involved, or you are involved in the experiments, the sciences, any of these articles, I would love to hear about it. I would love to learn more about it. I would love to have a discussion with you about the whole process, so we could actually have a closure, if you would, and really figure out if this is something really we could trust, or it's really just we're tossing some flour in the air. We don't know. So until we know further, if I find anything else, I will share it with you. But as of now, as of today, that information I'm very comfortable to say it's very misleading and inconclusive. And the context, the information is being taken out of context. So hope you find this very informative. I hope I could save you from the trouble of having to deal with the side effects of consuming gluten, as this thing is not very conclusive, as it's not really safe to assume that you'll be totally fine eating sourdough bread, unless you're making it perhaps at home and you're using different flours. So there's many variables, but again, it's still inconclusive. So here's the deal. I hope you find this information useful. Once again, my name is Varush. I'm the founder of Indulge Right Foods and realfoodismedicine.com. My whole goal is to deliver and help you make informed and knowledgeable decisions to lead your families to greater health. So once again, feel free to share this. Feel free to share it with your loved ones, repost it, whatever you want to do. And if you are involved, feel free to reach out. Let's take this to another level. Let's find out if we could actually recommend this to everybody or not, because I think we're playing Russian roulette with people's health and wellness. Until then, stay healthy and be careful not to believe everything you hear. Take care.